All right, folks, it is 2 p.m. Eastern. We are going to start our webinar now. Thank you all for joining, and we're going to have some folks more join in here briefly. I want to start by saying good afternoon. I hope you're all having a great Pride Month. We're delighted to have you join us for this installment of the Census Bureau 2021 Data Summit Series, Census Data for the LGBTQ Community. My name is Luis Cardenas Camacho, pronouns he, him, his. I'm a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau Denver-Dallas region, and I'm your host for today. Before I go into the agenda, I'd like to cover some basic information and house rules. Because of the number of participants on this webinar, everyone has been muted. We encourage everyone to utilize the chat box at the bottom right of your screen to ask questions, which we will answer throughout the webinar and at the end of the presentation. When typing your questions, please select the To Everyone drop-down box on the chat box. For general questions not covered here today, please contact us at ask.census.gov. For any media-related inquiries or questions regarding apportionment or redistricting, please contact our Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. For your convenience and future references, please expect a PDF of today's presentation and a resource sheet in 2 business days. This webinar is being recorded and will be available at a later date. For those who do not wish to be recorded, please take the time to opt out now and drop from the session. Today's session will cover the work being done at the Census Bureau on measuring sexual orientation and gender identity and the changes to the relationship to householder question to improve measurements of same-sex couple households. We will also have a high-level overview of the American Community Survey, which you'll hear me refer to as the ACS, and current data tools being used to measure same-sex couple households. Our agenda includes opening remarks by Megan Murray and Census partner Liz Seaton. Following opening remarks, we will have our Census Bureau presenters, Amy Simmons Smith, Dr. Laquita Walker, and David Schuler. After our presenters, there will be a Q&A session. Please remember to post your questions in the chat box to everyone. Before I turn it over to our speakers for opening remarks, I'd like to provide a high-level update on the 2020 census. On April 26, 2021, the U.S. Census Bureau released population counts to be used for apportioning the seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. To view more information about apportionment, including individual state populations, please visit census.gov. As an additional resource, you can find the link to our apportionment press kit listed on this slide. Redistricting data will be released on August 16, 2021 in the legacy format and will include information states need to redraw their legislative boundaries. This data will include block-level counts of populations. The full redistricting data with toolkits will be delivered by September 30th, 2021 for ease of use on data.census.gov. If you have questions about apportionment or redistricting, please contact pio@census.gov. To begin our webinar, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Megan Murray, pronouns they, them. Megan is currently serving as the Senior Advisor in the Census Bureau's Office of the Director. Megan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Again, I'm Megan Murray, and I serve as a Senior Advisor in the U.S. Census Bureau. And I just wanted to come on and say I am so excited that this webinar is happening today. When I first started my work as an advocate, I really underestimated the power of data to my work. I really believed that our stories, our lived experience should be what's driving policy, what's driving advocacy, and what helps us make change in the world. And I was right. Those stories, our lived experience really are important, but data is an extraordinarily important tool as well for empowerment. It helps us underscore what we do know about our communities. It helps us to uncover truths about our communities that we might not know. It helps make sure that our community's needs are met, and it helps, of course, make sure that we're seen as people. That's why I'm so excited to have joined the Census Bureau. I feel like in this role, I'm really able to help be a part of bringing the power of data into the toolbox of all folks around the country. And today's webinar is just one piece in that process. I'm extraordinarily excited as well to be joined by our colleagues both within the Bureau and our partners outside the Bureau from the National LGBTQ Task Force, where I was fortunate enough to work just before I came here. So with that, I'll toss it to my colleague, Liz Seaton, who joins us today from the National LGBTQ Task Force. Liz?
Great, thanks so much, Megan. I really appreciate the invitation. Happy Pride Month, everyone. As Megan said, I'm the Policy Director at the National LGBTQ Task Force. I am pronoun flexible, which means you can use he, she, or they to refer to me, and I'll be quite happy. I'm grateful to the Census Bureau for holding this summit today and for inviting the task force to be a partner in presenting this important event. I couldn't agree more with Megan that data is incredibly important for our work as advocates. Next slide. Our work on the Census Bureau relates to is from our Queering Democracy pillar, where we work to build a democracy that works for us. Luis, could you advance the slide, please? And to mobilize the grassroots to get the job done. Founded in 1973, our mission is the National LGBTQ Task Force works to advance full freedom, justice, and equality for LGBTQ people. And then the next slide is about our Queering Democracy pillar. And this is how we get into the census work at the task force. We've partnered with the task force in the 2020 census. Go ahead and press the next slide, Luis. Thanks. What we have done is what we call work to queer the census, which is telling the community how important it is that for us to be seen and for us to be counted. And that's because this relates to increased funding for community services, for help in drawing fair congressional districts, as Luis mentioned earlier, and also for the better enforcement of civil rights. That's why the task force works with our colleagues in the LGBTQ and social justice movements to ensure that everyone, especially people from marginalized communities, got counted in the 2020 census. And part of our work, next slide if you would please, Luis, was to run a robust Get Out the Count campaign. And this is where we worked ourselves as a task force and with partner organizations and community-based organizations to get out the word to hard-to-reach communities, and especially those disengaged with the overall democratic process. We focused on getting out the word about how important it was to fill out the census questionnaire, to really get everyone to really dig in and fill that out for people who identify as LGBTQ+, for people who are experiencing economic disenfranchisement, which as we know is a huge problem in this country, and people who were formerly incarcerated. It's important for all of those people to be counted and to be a part of our democratic process. We kept up a steady stream of information and engagement opportunities, gathered personal stories about why the census mattered and shared them, and galvanized the community with a network of mobile events. I hope you find today's data summit illuminating, and again, thanks to the Census Bureau for having us.
Thank you, Liz. Before I introduce our Census Bureau presenters, I'd like to let you know that each of you will be receiving a copy of these slides with all the references and links used by our presenters. If you have questions for our presenters, again, please post them on the chat. Our first presenter will be Amy Simmons Smith, pronouns she, her, hers, senior demographer focusing on sex, age, and gender identity in the Population Division. Amy will discuss her participation in the Federal Committee on Statistical Methodology Research Groups to improve measuring sexual orientation and gender identity. Following Amy, we have Dr. Laquita Walker, pronouns she, her, hers, statistician and demographer, and team lead in the Fertility and Family Statistics branch in the Social Economic Housing Division. Dr. Walker is also the co-author of the ACS Brief on Same-Sex Couple Households. Dr. Walker will discuss changes to the relationship to householder questions to address known data quality issues and improve the measurement of same-sex couple households. And finally, we will have David Schuler, pronouns he, him, his, data dissemination specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau Data Dissemination team. David will go over some of the American Community Survey and data tools. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter, Amy Simmons Smith.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Great to be with you here. Thanks so much for including me in this event. It's clear from the topic of this webinar that gender identity and sexual orientation are topics of interest to the participants here, along with the public, data users, and policymakers. the Census Bureau is committed to collecting accurate data on our nation's people and families, and we're actively working with federal statistical agencies and others on how best to measure gender identity and sexual orientation. So in my time, I'll focus on efforts to best measure sexual orientation and gender identity, and I want to talk to you about two specific research efforts. So let me start with some background information. We know that a few U.S. federal agencies have collected information for over a decade on sexual orientation and gender identity, or throughout this presentation, abbreviated SOGI, S-O-G-I. Granted, some aspects have been less routinely studied than others, and for instance, relatively little is actually known about population size, demographic characteristics, and well-being. The collection of accurate SOGI survey data present a number of measurement and methodological challenges. I'm sure that's not news to anyone that's logged in today. The comparatively small sexual and gender minority population in the United States suggests that relatively small sampling or reporting error can lead to significant errors in description and estimation, requiring an emphasis on precision and accuracy. Furthermore, the constructs of gender identity and sexual orientation are becoming more fluid in the U.S., research shows us. And some of the terms used by individuals to describe themselves are changing at a rapid rate. Finally, gender and sexuality can be sensitive topics we are aware of, and the privacy and confidentiality of respondents and respondent data must be handled with care. Next slide, please. So then what has the Census Bureau been doing? One way we have actively worked on measurement issues is an interagency group with representatives across federal agencies to look at best practices. The Office of Management and Budget Interagency Working Group on Measuring Sexual Orientation Gender Identity was the avenue. And this working group put out 3 papers looking at measurement issues. You can see the URL there at the bottom of your screen if you would like to look them up. The first paper on current measures came out in August of 2016 and focused on several key concepts central to discussion of SOGI, like sex, gender, transgender, and sexual orientation. So it set the stage with the concepts. Terms related to these concepts, such as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, may have more than one meaning based on social context according to research. The paper concluded that for federal surveys, both the purpose of the survey and the specific dimensions of SOGI intended to be measured are important design and measurement considerations. The second paper came out in September of 2016 and identified current SOGI measures where measurement error has been assessed and the nature of and extent of such error determined. And the final paper, which came out in October 2016, proposed a research agenda to address unresolved conceptual and methodological topics that currently impede robust survey measures in this area. And it was intended to assist in decisions that may face federal programs seeking to collect information on SOGI. Next slide, please. Turning to actual data collections, the Census Bureau collects SOGI information primarily in the surveys we conduct for other agencies. Since 2013, the National Health Interview Survey, sponsored by the National Center for Health Statistics, tracks the intersection of sexual orientation, health status, and access to health care. Since 2016, the National Crime Victimization Survey, sponsored by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, shows the intersection of being a crime victim with sexual orientation and gender identity. In 2020, the National Survey of Children's Health asked if a child had been treated or judged unfairly because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. We measured sexual orientation on public opinion surveys related to the 2020 census. The Census Bureau included a question on sexual orientation in the Census Barriers, Attitudes, and Motivators Survey, CBAMS, and the 2020 Census Attitudes Tracking Survey, to understand public opinion about census participation leading up to and during the data collection periods for the 2020 census. So this is not a comprehensive list. There are other federal agencies that collect information on SOGI, primarily in crime, health, and education surveys. You can look to the 3 papers listed on the last side for more survey data collections. This interagency working group is important because it provides a coordinated data collection effort across the U.S. federal data systems. In addition to the surveys above, another example is work by the Department of Labor, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the U.S. Census Bureau to explore the feasibility of adding SOGI questions to the current population survey, the CPS. The CPS measures the U.S. labor force. We conducted cognitive testing of SOGI questions on the CPS. This research assessed difficulty in responding, privacy and sensitivity issues, and how proxy reporting, or when one member of the household answers questions for other members of the household, how that affects data quality. This research found that generally most respondents were able to respond for themselves and for members of their household with little difficulty or sensitivity. However, we did find that proxy responses were more difficult and sensitive to households. Next slide, please. Since 2016, research and data collection efforts have continued to expand. Working under the auspices of the Federal Committee on Statistical Methodology, or FCSM, the work of the OMB group has continued. In August 2020, the working group published the paper, Updates on Terminology of Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity Survey Measures. And I was very involved in this paper, and I'm proud of that effort, along with all the papers this working group has put out. Findings pertain to SOGI question terminology and categories. The paper provides insight into open-ended questions and don't know or refuse to answer responses. In addition, the paper outlines a number of interesting specific findings, and I'll highlight just a few here. Relating to questions about sexual orientation, research shows some groups, especially teens, do not like using labels for their sexual orientation. We found out that sexual orientation is a spectrum or continuum that can change over time, but the terminology typically used does not treat it as such. The literature we looked at, we found that according to the data, some groups do not see transgender as an identity distinct from male or female. Others prefer genderqueer to female or male. So the bottom line is that different population groups might have more difficulty understanding and responding to SOGI questions. And that's why it was important for us to look at the terminology and response categories that exist. Next slide, please. Whether we are collecting data for the decennial census or the American Community Survey or for a sponsoring agency, we are committed to ensuring high data quality and confidentiality for our respondents. Anytime we measure small population groups, we need to take special care to address data quality and confidentiality. The exciting news is we have these working groups which have provided a wealth of information already. Also, sexual orientation and gender identity, we are aware, can be sensitive topics, and the privacy of people who respond and the confidentiality of their data must be handled with care. Next slide, please. So I'll go over a few future research topics. The FCSM group continues to meet regularly. To produce quality data on this population, we've identified several areas that need future research. We would need to research whether people would be willing and able to respond to questions about SOGI for other members of their household, which I referred to earlier as proxy reporting, and how that would affect the results. Some of the things we would need to look into, we would need to evaluate how responses compare when they come from a household member versus someone responding for them. Proxy reporting is a way that surveys keep costs down. So this is something that needs future research. We would need to evaluate what it means for the data if questions go unanswered also. Additionally, we would need to research the appropriate and relevant wording to use in the questions to make sure they reflect how people identify themselves. We would need to carry on the research from that most recent paper that looked at terminology and response categories. We need to make sure question terminology is relevant for all groups, including youth and young adults who are more likely to identify with sexual identities other than gay, lesbian, straight, or bisexual. We would also need to research how to ask these questions in languages other than English and for what minimum ages. So these are just some of the interesting research topics that need to be explored, or our existing knowledge expanded so that we can collect quality data that protects confidentiality. If you want to look into this and you look at those 3 papers that were originally published, the URL was at the bottom of the slide. There are more future research topics listed there. Next slide, please. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for your attention as I summarize the research efforts from the working groups and our efforts to improve measurement of sexual orientation and gender identity.
Thank you, Amy, for that wonderful presentation and for all the amazing work you are doing at the U.S. Census Bureau. Our next presenter is Dr. Laquita Walker. Dr. Walker?
Good afternoon. I'll be talking about recent changes to household data and measurement of same-sex couples in the American Community Survey, or ACS. In order to meet the Census Bureau's mission to provide quality measures about the nation's people and households, we have been working over the last decade or so to improve our measurement of households and families, with the focus on improving measurement of same-sex couples. We have undertaken extensive research to develop and implement changes to the relationship to householder question, and have made adjustments to the methods for processing these data in Census Bureau surveys, and this includes the decennial census and the ACS. Next slide, please. This presentation will focus on the changes we've made to the relationship to householder item in the ACS, including changes to our response categories and editing procedures for same-sex couples. First, I'll describe what has changed regarding both the questionnaire item and the editing procedure. Then I will show you selected estimates on our recently released brief, Same-Sex Couple Households 2019, and then some of our data visualization and other data products. Next slide, please. So now I'll talk about the background as far as the changes that we've made to the relationship data in the ACS. Next slide, please. As most of you know, we've been working to improve the measurement of same-sex couples by revising the relationship to householder question. This effort has focused on addressing some data quality challenges we've encountered. The problem is a statistical one, where a low rate of random survey measurement error in a large group, in this case opposite-sex married couples, creates issues in the estimates of a smaller group, in this instance same-sex married couples. Next slide, please. In the past, we approached our editing procedures for those who reported they were same-sex spouses by changing the relationship from spouse to unmarried partner, retaining the reported information on sex. In 2013, we showed same-sex spouses in the edited data. And then in 2019, we added the newly implemented relationship to householder categories. This included explicit same-sex and opposite-sex categories for both spouses and unmarried partners. Next slide, please. Near the beginning of the interview, we asked how each household member is related to the householder, also called the reference person. This should be someone who owns the home or whose name is on the lease. Here you see a comparison of the relationship categories previously offered and the revised categories that were phased in. The categories of spouse and an unmarried partner were expanded to distinguish between opposite sex and same-sex couples. Please note that the order of the current categories has been altered for ease of comparison. Unmarried partner previously did not appear next to spouse. It actually appeared further down on the list after the categories for the various relatives. Next slide, please. So now I'll talk about the edit changes. Next slide, please. Beginning in 2019, we use a joint age-sex relationship edit. Along with the information from the new relationship categories, the editing procedures allow for the resolution of scenarios where relationship and sex are inconsistently reported in the data. Next slide, please. Here are two examples of what I'm calling mismatched households, where the relationship and sex reports are inconsistent. In the couple pictured on the left, a man is reported as the female householder's same-sex spouse. On the right, both people are reported as male, but opposite sex spouse is reported as the relationship category. These types of inconsistent reports are mainly due to inadvertent mistakes, but are also likely reflecting some cases in which transgender people have done their best with the limited sex categories that are on the questionnaire. In any case, we do not output the data this way. We make the relationship and sex reports consistent. Next slide, please. Only about 0.5% of coupled households are mismatched. Our rationale for resolving these inconsistencies in ACS is based on data from the largest test conducted in the decennial program, the 2015 National Content Test. Using the 2015 NCT data, we found that when we use a first names index and assume that those with names reported as male or female 95% of the time can be assigned a sex, the majority, or 61% of mismatched couples are opposite sex couples. If we relax the stringent assumption that the name must be reported male or female 95% of the time to 80% of the time, then we find that 70% of mismatched couples are opposite sex couples. Next slide, please. In sum, the addition of newly implemented editing procedures and response categories that now distinguish opposite sex and same-sex spouses and unmarried partners make it possible to see reports where the relationship category is inconsistent with the sex reported for the two members of the couple. We can now resolve these mismatches with new, more detailed information. Next slide, please. In this next section, I will talk about a few of our recent data product releases that focus on same-sex couples and same-sex couple households. Next slide, please. First, I'm going to share some of the important findings that are included in the recently released same-sex couple households brief. Next slide, please. Nationally, about 980,000 households in the U.S. were same-sex couple households in 2019. Among same-sex couple households, approximately 58% consisted of married couples and about 42% consisted of unmarried partner households. This was in contrast to opposite sex couples, 88% of which were married couples and roughly 12% of which were unmarried partners. Among both married and unmarried same-sex couples, there were more female couple households than male couple households. Next slide, please. Now, shifting to the geographic distribution of same-sex couple households, there was a lot of variation across the U.S. In 27 states, same-sex couples made up a lower percentage of all coupled households than a national average of 1.5%. States with the lowest percentages of same-sex couple households included North Dakota, Idaho, and Montana. On the other hand, 11 states plus the District of Columbia had higher percentages of same-sex couple households. This included District of Columbia with 7%, Delaware with 2.3%, and Oregon with 2.2%. Next slide, please. Now we'll turn to another geographic component, looking at same-sex couple households by metropolitan statistical area, or metro area. Based on 10 of the metro areas that had among the highest percentages of same-sex couple households, approximately 2.8% of all coupled households in the San Francisco metro area consisted of same-sex married couples. Same-sex married couple or same-sex unmarried partner households. The Baltimore metro area, meanwhile, was about 1.3 times higher than the national percentage. Next slide, please. Now, taking a look at coupled households with children under 18 present, married opposite sex couple households and married same-sex couple households had higher percentages of children under 18 present than their counterparts in unmarried partner households. This underscores that a higher percentage of kids live with married couples compared to unmarried partners, and this held true whether they were opposite sex or same-sex married couples. Of all couple types, opposite sex married couples were the most likely to have children under 18 present in their households. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to shift gears and we can take a look at a few of our data visualizations. This is one of my favorite visualizations as it shows the evolution of data collection for same-sex married couple households. It provides a historical timeline of the methods used by the Bureau to collect, process, and release data for same-sex married couples between 1995 and 2020. It contains history about the ACS, Current Population Survey, or CPS, the Survey of Income and Program Participation, or SIP, American Housing Survey, and the Decennial Census. It also provides context for legislative, legal, and cultural references during the same period. Next slide, please. The next visualization is interactive, allowing data users to look up information about same-sex couples by state. This includes demographic, social, and economic characteristics such as age, sex, race, employment status, and health insurance coverage. Next slide, please. Here's an excerpt from some of our tables available through our data dissemination website, data.census.gov. I think we're a little off with the slides here. Could you go back to the previous slide, please? And just to talk a little bit more about this, my colleague Dave will talk about this after my presentation, but it just shows a highlight of some of the changes we've made to our table. Next slide, please. In addition to the data visualization showing the evolution of data collection and the recently same-sex couple households brief, we also produce a series of stories about our data in the America Count series. Since 2005, we've also produced a tables package providing information about same-sex couple households, including estimates containing demographic, economic, and geographic characteristics. The links are provided in this presentation and are also available on our website. To wrap this up, the revised relationship categories in ACS are part of a larger effort to get more accurate same-sex estimates across all census data products. Next slide, please. The changes made to the relationship to householder response categories allow improved measurement of specific types of family and living arrangements, including same-sex couples and their children. Our recent data releases continue to highlight the newly available content. Next slide, please. I'd like to thank you for your time today. I will be looking at the chat box. I'm aware there's some questions there. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact me or visit the ACS website for more details about the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker, for that great presentation. I said Dr. Walker and Amy will both be answering questions in the chat, so please post them there. Also, just a reminder, we will be sending a copy of all the slides with the contact information, the links, and the resources that you see here today. Next up, I'd like to introduce our presenters, David Schuler.
I'm going to need the ball there, Luis. Good afternoon, everybody. As we're going to look at here, we're going to see some of the data resources for the LGBTQ plus community. Okay. Just kind of going over what we're going to do. We're going to just take a quick look at our constitutional mission. We're going to find some demographic community information with data.census.gov, and then we're going to tap into some other tools. Okay. What do we do the other 9 years? Well, the Census Bureau's mission is to serve as the nation's leading provider of quality data about its people and economy. We do a whole lot. We do many surveys for different government agencies. We do approximately 130 plus or minus every year, and there's a complete list here at the bottom. We do all the economic indicators. Well, we do 13 of the 36 principal federal economic indicators, and we do the footwork for 6 more. Like, for instance, we do the current population survey, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, Bureau of Labor Statistics reports out the unemployment information. Okay, I'm just going to jump right into it here. Data.census.gov is where we're headed here. Before I click that beautiful, I'm going to say what the area that I'm going to be focusing on today is the Center on Colfax, and that is actually over here in track 3102. But I'm focusing on the 2 areas that they have identified as Uptown and Capitol Hill. So I am going to take you through that. First thing we're going to do is from the census homepage. Actually, let me get over there. And here. Okay, from the census homepage, census.gov, we're going to go ahead and choose by topics here. We're going to do explore data, and then we're going to go down to data tools and apps. And then we're also then going to scroll down to explore data. And that's going to open up for us data.census.gov. Or conversely, you can just go to data.census.gov and you'll be taken to this homepage. There's a couple of interesting things on here that we'll talk about in looking at the microdata. We'll also look at profiles and narrative data profiles and narrative profiles. So without ado, let's jump in here to the advanced search. And we're going to go ahead and to get right to the topic at hand, we're going to go ahead and go into topics. I'm going to choose family and living arrangements. Then I'm going to choose same-sex couples. And I'm not going to choose a geography yet, just because I want to see what comes up on the screen. Okay. Two things come up. One, we get we get the number of same-sex couples in the United States from the 2019 one-year estimate. And then we get the tables that have that information in it. So we're going to go and look at this first table here, which is B11009. And then we're going to go ahead, now we're going to go back and we're going to add our geography and do that by customizing my table. I'm going to go to geographies and I'm going to do some track level data here. I'm sorry, I'm going to do some track level data here. That data is only available for that particular chart, that particular information down to the state and the PUMA level. PUMA is a public use microdata area of approximately around 100,000 people. And those are set by the states, the Census Bureau in cooperation with the states. Their statistical areas. So we're going to look at PUMAs. We're going to look at Colorado. And the interesting thing is, hey, there is no data in PUMAs in table format. So we'll show you how to get around and look at that a little differently. Real quickly, the states, I can get state data here. Okay. And we'll go ahead and close that. Now we see the estimates for couples in Colorado. Same sex, we have 12,621, and then same sex of cohabitating partners are 9,408. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to that. We're going to go back to the homepage here. Not homepage, I'm sorry. Wrong one. We're going to go back to data.census.gov by going up here in the corner and clicking on the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay, it's going to bring us back to that homepage. Then I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to take a look at our microdata, and I'm going to explore not microdata. Okay, in this case, I'm going to use the one-year data set of public use micro. There's plenty to choose from. The top one is always the most current data set available. The vintage, we're going to choose the 2019 ACS vintage. And I'm going to hit next. Now, keep in mind that data from 2019, 2018 back to 2010 is based on geography that is set in 2010, just like the data coming from the 2020 census will impact the geography of the American Community Survey. And they do change from time to time. So the first thing I'm going to go in here and do is I'm just going to type in couples. And I come up with couple type. Now the cool thing about this is I go over here to details and it tells me exactly what that is. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose this particular option. I'm going to go ahead right now and say view the table. Now I'm going to also go ahead and I'm going to add some geography. And I'm going to do that on the rows here. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and go geo. Actually, I can do it from select geographies up here. Select geography. Notice that the geographies only go down state and then Puma level data, which is that 100,000 population. I'm going to go ahead and go to Colorado. And I'm going to choose the 5 Pumas within Denver. And we're going to look at the table on that. Okay. And I am going to go ahead and I'm going to do some magic here and I'm going to switch my columns and my geography. Okay. So this kind of gives you a little easier to read. The nice thing about the microdata tool, MDAT, is that there is a lot of versatility in it. And it is looking at a 75% of the ACS sampling. So you won't get the exact numbers that you would get if you looked at a table, but what it's doing is going down and it is enabling you to go in and look at variables that aren't together in a table, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I can then choose to just download it. I can copy the bookmark where I got this from for future use, or I can download it in a table view. I like to use the table view. And because those numbers were looking at household weights, meaning that was the number of households versus the number of persons in those households, that's the weight we're going to choose here. And then, of course, it downloads and into a, in this case, a CVS file, and you're good to go. Okay. And okay. So what you get when it comes down is the magic of television. You get a CVS file that looks like this, and with all CVS files, you need to do a little manipulation to get it to look good. So that's that, and this is not meant to be a in-depth deep dive into MDAT. If you really want to get into the microdata, there is a great tutorial on Census Academy, which they'll talk about later. Okay, so I'm going to head back to my presentation here. Okay. Let's get back up here. Okay, the other thing that I then did was for the Pumas, I did run a map of it. The interesting thing about, because it's done in cooperation with the state has all 5 pumas in Denver County, which also is the same boundaries as Denver City. Now, the thing to note here is this area right here is that Uptown and Capitol Hill district, okay? And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because the census tracts are kind of bounded by, so if I'm looking at that area in terms of Puma, I'm not able to actually zero in those numbers from the 2019 data. Going forward, hopefully that will be a little more pronounced, especially in the 2020 data, to be able to see it down to the track and block level. Okay. The other thing we can do is we can run data profiles. We can run it on any state, county, whatever comes, and it gives you a nice little report that allows you to just kind of take a look at things like it gives you overall households, marital income, and so forth. Okay. We also can do data profiles and then narrative profiles. Okay. And then we got one other really cool tool that I want to point out, because if you're a service organization servicing an area, you can, looking at this particular area, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to define my regional area. We can also define a small business, you know, if we're going to start a small business data there. But this one is really for regional organizations. And so I'm going to look at that area of Uptown and Capitol Hill and the census tracts involved. And you'll notice over here that I have my region. If I decide to add any more area, it'll just, you know, create this list and then redraw the regional boundaries. Okay. What do we get out of that? We get a pretty cool set of reports. And the neat thing about it is that those actual reports come up and it gives you information about the residents, information about the businesses in the area. You can either get a summary or detailed comparison, and then you get this really cool thing called consumer spending. And consumer spending actually breaks out for you. Give it a second to paint here. Really cool thing is it breaks out information, and it doesn't come from the Census Bureau. It actually comes from Esri. They're the ArcGIS people, the mapping people, and they get this credit card data, and they've provided it to us. So the really cool thing about it is if you're going to start a business or you're looking at just demographics of the area, you can look at, for instance, how much does each house spend on men's apparel? There's an infinite number of, not an infinite, it's finite, but there's a number of very good statistics there that you can use to identify your area or identify your business market. Okay, go back to, okay. Just going to wrap it here in a second, but I just wanted to talk real quick about On the Map, which is a really cool visualization tool. And I tell most of my entrepreneurs that I'm working with is this gives you an idea. We ran an analysis on that same area, and this gives you an idea how many people are coming to work in the area, how many people are going to work somewhere else, and how many people live and work in the area. And the really cool things is we can then do some analysis by distance direction, also by North American industry classification system coding. Okay. Another really quick cool thing is our COVID hub that's out there. That's our impact hub. It does give you by state and by county information. You can get just seeing what's going on. There's two pages to it, and everything is clickable on it. And I recommend checking it out because it really does give you good information about how the community is impacted. Also, you've got those resilience surveys and things like that are pretty good. Okay. I'm just including, when you get it, there's a list of tools that are on census.gov. These are some of the non-census sites that I use all the time and point people to. And then they're sites from our partners. Some are state data center partners. Some are just other government agencies that I plug into. And there's a complete list of data tools at the web address down there for data tools. So if anybody ever needs any information, you can certainly reach out to me directly. This phone number I carry on my hip. The best way to reach me is via email. Or you can reach out to the census.askdata@census.gov. And with that, I am going to bounce this back to my friend Luis. A second here, I gotta get out of this. Escape. Stop. Oh, there we go.
Luis, while we're waiting, can you go ahead and start getting the questions going?
I will start the questions. We do have a question for Dr. Walker from Susan Edwards. She's asking, what are the best practices in estimating the size of population that is LGBTQIA, but not living with a partner or are married or not? This seems crucial for answering the questions Charles raised, as well as many others. Is cohabitating rate something that could be modeled so that there could be extrapolations that are geographically representative?
Thank you for that question. I think it goes beyond the scope of my expertise. Currently, as I put in the chat box, the ACS anchors each of its responses to the relationship to the householder. So anything beyond an unmarried partner or cohabitating partner or a spouse, we wouldn't have that information. In other words, we don't have information about sexual orientation explicitly or per se. We just know what individuals' relationships are to the householder. So at this point, it's still quite limited, and I would encourage you to take a look at some of the work that the Interagency Working Group has done just to see where they are and what recommendations they may have.
Okay. We also have another question coming in from Charles Kohler saying, how can census data be used by LGBTQ organizations to compare the ethnic and racial diversity of the organization's membership to the racial and ethnic diversity of the organization's service area, the population they serve?
Thank you for that question. So again, we wouldn't have any estimates that you could extrapolate as far as the larger LGBTQ community. What we would have is, and I'm sure David's presentation touched on this, if you know the location in which the organization is, you would be able to get contextual data. So if, for example, that organization is located in a certain state, we do have state level data available. Also, the tables that are included in the presentation, we have some same-sex couple household table packages, and they include metropolitan area data. And so I would encourage you to take a look at those, and you may be able to find some contextual information that helps to serve what you're looking for the organization.
Thank you. We do have a question for David as well that came in. It says, how is all this data collected? This question is from John Schuler. It says, I know census is done each 10 years, as details questions about small percentage of responders. So how does the rest of the population get counted? How does the rest of this information?
Okay. Well, actually, the decennial census is all persons in the U.S. That touches every household and attempts to count all persons, no matter where they're housed, they're living. The other census, the survey, the American Community Survey, surveys 3.5 million homes annually to produce the data that's collected. Other surveys we have, neat way to go find out what their collection methods are is to go to census.gov and then go over to the surveys and programs tab, select that survey, and on every survey they have an about and a technical documentation, and both of those places on the surveys are a very good place to start when you're trying to figure out how it all works.
Thanks for that answer. We do have a question also for Amy. It's coming in from Wendy Rich, saying, do you have any idea when the census and ACS will add SOGI demographic questions so individual LGBTQ plus members can be counted rather than only people who are coupled?
Right. Thank you so much for that question. I put a pretty lengthy response in the chat. Just to go over it briefly, we have a well-established process for requests for content that the Census Bureau works through. I am not an expert on that process. It involves balancing the information and sensitivity and privacy of the people that would be responding, along with the need for the data. And data can be requested by federal agencies at any time. The Census Bureau, it's not necessary. Another key to this is that data can be requested at any time, and agencies can demonstrate a need for the data and start talking to our legal department and others about their need for the data. So I would encourage you, I've just basically said what I put in the chat at a level. So please go there and look at that response, and then reach out to me via email if needed, and I can also connect with other people to talk with at the Census Bureau. My role right now is participating in this working group and then reviewing decennials and American Community Survey data.
Great. And speaking of that, we have another question came in from Ms. Denise Wright, stating a great presentation. Does the committee members include members of the LGBTQ plus community?
Right. I also put a response in the chat there. I'm happy to connect with our chair of the working group who's at the Census Bureau. I do not know about the how members would identify. I'm not sure that that is listed anywhere, but there are many. The papers that I put the link to indicate what federal agencies are participating on the working group. So thank you so much for that question.
Thank you so much, and that's going to conclude a portion for our Q&A here. We're going to move on to, I want to speak to you briefly about our data dissemination training and Data Census Academy, where you can find some go-to videos and some how-to videos on some of the topics that we covered here and some of the videos of other data products, as well as courses and webinars to increase your knowledge on census data. You can find these at, again, census.gov/academy, or by clicking the links on this slide. I know some members mentioned that they're not able to click the link to the slide here. You will be emailed this slide deck with all the links and resources that will be available for you to click to. The Census Bureau also has a team of data dissemination specialists who can assist in providing training, workshops, and presentations to show a variety of census data tools, data toolsets, and programs, which can be customized to the needs of your organization. To request a free data training, please email census.askdata@census.gov. And if you enjoyed this webinar, we do have more coming up. You can visit census.gov and simply type in 2021 Data Summit Series in the search bar to view and register for upcoming data summits happening between now and August 2021. If you wish to contact any of the 6 regional offices of the Census Bureau, you can visit our website to find your regional office and their contact information. These offices are responsible for data collection, data dissemination, geographic operations, and can help you connect with your local partnership specialists, people like myself and David, who can help you with your data needs. Finally, I would like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I would also like to give special thanks to our guest speakers, Megan Murray and Liz Seaton, and our presenters, Amy Simmons Smith, Dr. Laquita Walker, and David Schuler. I'd also like to thank Samantha Steen for her technical support, and a very, very special thanks to Partnership Coordinator Pauline Nunez for bringing this group of amazing subject matter experts together for this presentation. As a friendly reminder, please expect a PDF of today's presentation and a resource sheet at a later date. That concludes our webinar. Thank you for joining us.
Luis,
Yes,
I just wanted to mention that I have made copies of everybody's questions that we didn't answer, and we will go back to the group that are speakers. So we'll make sure that we'll try to answer those questions for you all. Okay, so just wanted to mention that I know we didn't get to some questions, but that we will work with it as a group to try to answer some of those in some shape or form, even if we don't have the answer to it, but at least we'll review them. So I just didn't want people to think we had not made account of their questions. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Luis, go ahead and close.
No problem. Thank you so much. Thank you. So you heard it from Pauline yourself, folks. We will be answering all your questions, and we'll email that along with the slides and a video of today's presentation at a later date. That concludes our webinar, and we thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful afternoon and rest of your Pride Month. You may disconnect at this time.